This video is made possible by NordVPN. Take control of your internet experience today. Go to nordvpn.com/toptenz to get a 2-year plan plus an extra gift with a huge discount. And now today's video. Cancel culture is the hottest thing in the world right now. We're cancelling stuff left and right, if the internet is to be believed. But it turns out the world has a long history of taking things that are inoffensive and meaningless and then banning them totally with little to no reason whatsoever. Number 10. Potatoes. Today the humble potato may be the most popular vegetable in the world. It's versatile and delicious and can complement almost any food at any time. What else is at home next to a fast food burger or a high-end steak? What goes well with breakfast or dinner? What can you fry, bake, mash, boil, or stick in a stew? The potato is everything you need. But it was not always so. Once upon a time, not only was the potato not lauded for its near universal deliciousness, it was straight up persecuted. In 1748, the French waged all-out war on potatoes. Potatoes were not food for humans at that time. They were meant to be used as livestock feed. And not only that, the French were under the impression that potatoes caused leprosy. Potatoes were not native to Europe. The Spanish had brought them back from the New World, and people were skeptical to say the least. You can still see this today when people are confronted by new foods. There's an entire industry of YouTube videos dealing with people eating stuff from other lands. So back in the day, this mysterious tuber that grew underground was scary and weird. So they outlawed it for nearly 25 years, until French army officer Antoine-Augustin Parmentier convinced his people how great they were after being held prisoner by the Prussians who fed him potatoes, and he didn't die or get leprosy. Number 9. Female belly buttons on TV. In today's modern TV landscape, we're spoiled for choice when it comes to titillation. Thanks to HBO and other cable networks, you can barely turn the channel without something sexy jumping out at you. But back in the TV dark ages, sometime before the late 1990s, television was a far different medium. No one cursed, violence was heavily implied, and there certainly wasn't nudity on most channels. Back in 1951, the National Association of Broadcasters was hard at work protecting home audiences from corruption and moral turpitude. To this end, they established guidelines for what could and could not be seen on television. Naturally, the seductive and beguiling female navel was on their list. It was banished from the airwaves lest the easily influenced see it and become aroused or some such. This rule against female belly buttons on TV, because male belly buttons are devoid of sinister powers, stayed on the books for over 30 years, until 1983. There were a few moments in history when the belly button sneaked in, notably with Uhura on an episode of Star Trek in 1967, but for the most part, it wasn't until Cher kept showing off her midriff in the 1970s that the belly button was finally set free. Number 8. Harps. If you watch or read much epic fantasy, you know that harps have an important place in the world of bards and traveling minstrels. This wasn't just pulled out of thin air, though. Harps in real life have a long history of not just making music, but influencing people and culture. This was especially true in the Celtic world, where a harpist was a true artist and a person afforded great respect. In the 1500s, tensions between England and Ireland were especially high. The English crown decided that Irish harp players were a danger because of the potential power and influence they wielded. In fact, Queen Elizabeth issued a decree that all harpers were to be hanged and their instruments destroyed. Harpers were accused of being spies and were imprisoned. By 1650, Oliver Cromwell banned harps entirely, the most gentle of all musical instruments. The one associated with angels and very low-key dinner parties was now illegal. Existing harps were destroyed and harpers were banned from even getting together in groups. The tradition of Irish harp playing was almost entirely lost as a result. Number 7. Carp farming. Carp is one of the most common everyday fish in the world. The common carp is native to China and has been farmed for ages. They're very easy to raise, they grow quickly, and they're pretty good to eat. It's everything you want in a fish. Unless, of course, your name sounds kind of like the same word used for fish in your language. For generations, the common carp was a staple of Chinese cuisine and Chinese fishing. However, things changed during the Tang dynasty from 618 to 906. The Emperor Li banned the farming and consumption of the common carp because the name for carp sounded something too similar to the emperor's family name in Chinese. On the upside, this ban led to Chinese fishermen focusing on other species of fish. This ended up greatly diversifying their agriculture and their cuisine as a result, so it all worked out in the end, didn't it? Number 6. Mate. Ask any Australian who isn't Australian to talk like an Australian, and 99 times out of 100 they're gonna say, "G'day, mate," and then they're gonna maybe reference shrimp on the barbie. Sadly, this is what an entire nation has been reduced to in the eyes of those abroad. It's kind of ironic then that despite how inextricably linked to Australia the word mate is, that it was once shunned as the powers that be tried to ban it from the land down under. Back in 2005, the Aussie government felt that it was necessary to decree that security guards at the Parliament House were not permitted to call people mate. Apparently, someone else in the government had lodged a complaint. The blowback was swift and severe as Australians en masse expressed their love of mate. As it happens, the word comes from Germany, and at least one linguist believes it became popular thanks to drunks who couldn't quite remember each other's names, so they just called one another mate. Australia has adopted it wholly, and the ban against using the word was swiftly reversed. Now, just before we get into the rest of today's video, let me tell you about today's fantastic sponsor, NordVPN. Do you remember what the internet was like in 1998, telling your sister to get off the phone so you could check your email, then waiting 30 or 40 seconds for it just to load, and then it being super ugly? Well, the internet's changed a lot in 25 years, but millions of people still surf the web like Marky Mark is still a part of the funky bunch. It's time to bring your surfing habits into the 21st century with NordVPN. Protect yourself from IP trackers and aggressive advertisers with NordVPN's military-grade encryption. It works great whether you're sporting a Mac or a PC. Plus, Nord is based in Panama, which makes it a great option for both Americans and Europeans. And look, a common misconception is that VPNs are for people who want to play defense, but they're not just about protecting yourself. You'll be amazed at the different streaming options you have when jumping on a server from another country. Protect yourself or just play around, buy it for yourself, or consider it as a gift for another internet user in your life. With NordVPN, you've got lots of options. And right now, you guys can take advantage of a special deal. Any purchase of a 2-year plan comes with a free gift and a huge discount. And if you make a purchase and decide a VPN isn't for you, NordVPN also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. There's never been a better time to enhance your online experience with NordVPN. So again, go to nordvpn.com/TopTenz to get a 2-year plan plus an extra gift with a huge discount. And now back to today's video. Number 5, sausage. You can make a good case for sausage being one of the best foods that mankind has ever created. Meat ground up with seasoning and encased in a tube so you can get it in a bun. Genius. But alas, the classic German sausage was not always free to satisfy the hunger of the masses. But who would ever dare ban innocent and delicious sausages? Well, that would be the German war machine. The German war effort was full steam ahead during World War I, and they were putting a lot of their eggs in a basket made of Zeppelins. They're not much use these days, but about 100 years ago, a Zeppelin was cutting-edge technology. Unfortunately, you needed cow intestines to make a World War I-era Zeppelin, the same intestines that had previously been used to make sausage. At the height of the war effort, Germany and its allies were using upwards of 250,000 cows to make bladders to hold hydrogen and keep those Zeppelins afloat. That meant Germany and its allies were temporarily banned from producing sausage. Germany ended up making around 140 Zeppelins during the war. Today, that sounds a bit silly because how practical and useful could a blimp really be? But they were remarkably effective at the time and incredibly hard to combat. It was years before a proper defense against Zeppelins was mounted and they were able to be shot down. Number 4, trapper keepers. If you are of a certain age, when you were in high school, if you didn't have a trapper keeper, there was a good chance that someone sitting next to you in class had one. Obviously not my age, I have no idea what this is. These were the cool 3-ring binders that were arguably the only binder in the world that had a name. It's a trapper keeper. It keeps, well, papers, but it did it reliably well. Trapper keepers date all the way back to 1978. They were designed to look cool and colourful. There were pockets and storage places inside, and you could snap it shut to hold your stuff secure. Amazing technology. Mead, the company that makes trapper keepers, sells $100 million a year of them. That's impressive, but teachers still banned them. By the early 2000s, schools were putting out lists of items that students would need for their school year and things that were not allowed at all. Trapper keepers topped the banned list, forbidden from numerous classrooms for a myriad of reasons. Rumor had it that a lot of teachers couldn't stand the sound of the Velcro snap with kids opening and closing them all day. Others said they were just too big and too clumsy to be practical in a classroom setting. Students were encouraged to buy less organized binders because, ironically, all that organization made kids unorganized. It was too hard to find what they were looking for. Number 3, trench coats. Trench coats date back to the First World War. These long coats were designed for officers as an alternative to heavier coats that were worn at the time. They could keep them dry and warm, and let's be honest, they look pretty cool. They gained popularity over the years as a fashionable and masculine design popularized in a lot of movies and favored by soldiers, cops, and gangsters on film. not to mention Neo. Fast forward several decades and The Matrix made them even cooler. Well, there we go. With about a century of history, how could this clothing item get banned? The Columbine school shooting became one of the most polarizing events in modern history. In many people's minds, this set off the continuing and nightmarish trend of school shootings. The shooters committed their crime both wearing long, duster-style trench coats. For some reason, this became a focal point for many school administrators around the country. They banned trench coats out of hand because that was a visual representation of the crimes, and it seemed to some people like a reasonable response. Some schools literally banned the color black because the shooters wore black. It's going too far, isn't it, though? The ban began after the 1999 shooting, but continued for decades. There was a Santa Fe shooting in 2018 in which the shooter also wore a trench coat. The ban on the coats was still on the books across many school districts at the time. It's not a national ban by any means, and it goes from district to district. Presumably, this ban still exists in many school districts where the coats are simply listed as unacceptable outerwear. Number 2. Pinball. Pinball has fallen by the wayside in modern years. Sadly, because it's awesome. Arcades in general are few and far between these years, thanks in no small part to the fact that home gaming systems are able to offer a superior gaming experience when compared to most arcade machines. So if you can find an article, it's mostly dedicated to retro gaming, and that probably includes 1 or 2 pinball machines. What we think of as modern pinball machines date back to around the 1930s. They were staples of not just arcades, but bars and bowling alleys and more. They seem like a good bit of old-fashioned fun these days, but there was a long period of time when they were the scourge of New York City. Starting in the 1940s, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles banned pinball machines for being pits of moral depravity. That's thanks to the fact that they were considered a kind of gambling when they were introduced, and, well, nobody wants that. So you might be wondering, well, Simon, how is a pinball machine gambling? Because when they were first developed, they had no flippers. That meant that the player had to move and shake the machine to move the ball, and to the government, that was a game of luck, and therefore a game of gambling. Amazingly enough, the ban was on the books for around 30 years. The machines were smashed by the police and literally tossed in the river as part of what was alleged to be a crackdown on the mafia, of all things. The ban only ended in 1976 when one intrepid pinball player managed to convincingly demonstrate that pinball was a game of skill. Number 1. Gamers. There's been a long, weird history of people talking down to the world of gamers. Video games have been blamed for all manner of violent or criminal behaviors, not to mention laziness, and, well, a bunch of other stuff that they obviously don't cause. Professional gaming is a huge industry, and the game market itself is worth billions, but people in general still talk about it like it's kids in their parents' basements doing it exclusively. So it's all a bit weird, isn't it? When it comes to gaming, it's usually games themselves that receive people's ire, but gamers themselves have been banned from things as well for no other reason than they're gamers. Gran Turismo gamers were banned from driving actual race cars because they were too good at it. Starting in 2008, Nissan's GT Academy was enlisting Gran Turismo gamers to race actual cars in real life, and they were good at it. Really good. Too good. In 2013, British GT Championship, a race that has existed since 1993, banned Gran Turismo players from racing. This stemmed from the previous year's Pro-Am race, when the amateur, who was a consummate Gran Turismo player, proved himself to be as good as the pros thanks to his gaming experience. Because the game made amateur racers so good, they were banned because it was considered an unfair advantage over others, which is absolutely absurd. So I really hope you found this video interesting. If you did, smash that like button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.